Tonight, Dr. Eric Pearl joins us. We talk about the science of healing next on Coast to Coast AM. Eric Pearl ran a highly successful chiropractic practice for 12 years until one day when patients began reporting that they felt his hands on them, even though he hadn't physically touched them. Patients soon reported receiving miraculous healings. All this occurred when Eric simply held his hands near them, and to this very day, it continues. Eric elicits great interest from top doctors and medical researchers at hospitals, universities worldwide, traveling the globe extensively throughout the year, bringing the light and information of what he calls reconnective healing onto the planet. Here he is tonight, full program, Dr. Eric Pearl. Eric, welcome back.
Hey, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Everyone's looking forward to your return. How have you been?
I've been wonderful. I've been great. I've just, I'm living on airplanes, so I'm always catching up with my time zones. But other than that, terrific.
Have you learned how to fall asleep on a plane? I finally have taught myself that.
Well, actually, the trick. Well, what trick do you use?
Exhaustion.
The trick to falling asleep on the plane, really, if you have trouble falling asleep, is letting yourself fall asleep when you want to, because you tend to want to right around the time it's getting ready to take off or starting to take off, because they change the air pressure and it affects your brain in a certain way that makes you very sleepy. The problem is that most people try to stay up through that part so they can get to the food, and then they don't know how to go back to sleep.
Good point. Good point. And I have been noticing that that's the period that I start to get a little drowsy.
Yeah, everyone does.
So that's cool. What's new with you, though?
Well, let's see. I just finished presentations in Serbia, Prague, and arrived here in Tel Aviv right now. And we have a lot of interesting things going on. There's a film out called The Living Matrix that was just released that has that opens up with a story of a boy, a 5-year-old child, who had a healing from cerebral palsy in Greece. And that film has some wonderful researchers in it. Of course, it has Lynn McTaggart, who's
sure
always fascinating. She's written The Field and The Intention Experiments. And I love what she does, because what she really does is she spends time with the researchers until they're probably all, going crazy trying to explain what they do. And, because a lot of times they like to understand it to the level they understand it and think that everyone else should. And then she takes all the work and translates it into something I like to call English. So the rest of us can understand what's going on.
What time is it in Tel Aviv right now, by the way?
It is now 12 minutes after 9.
Perfect. We're going to keep you for 3 hours, and it won't be into the wee hours for you. Not bad, huh?
No. That'll be a change from usual.
Yeah.
And let's see, Rupert Sheldrake. That's a funny mix-up, isn't it? Rupert Sheldrake is also in the film.
Well, Murdoch's been so successful, he could be in this film, too. You never know.
Film, couldn't he? We don't know exactly what he'd talk about, but he certainly is successful enough to do so.
Exactly.
And Bruce Lipton, and I love the way Bruce Lipton brings science, especially the new science, into researching, and makes things really understandable and makes things clear. I mean, it's time for us to recognize the clarity of what's going on in the world, because, we find, I think, with this shift in time that we're going through, the one that very well may have kicked into high gear around 1987 with the harmonic convergence and is leading up through 2012, that we are being given greater gifts, and yet we're also being asked by the universe to step up to a new level and meet greater challenges to receive these gifts. And very many times, the gift and the challenge is a mirror image of itself. For instance, today we are being given the gift of being able to demystify the healing process. And the funny thing is that the challenge is whether or not, as human beings, we are willing to allow it to be demystified. In other words, the challenge comes back to transcending our own ego, and the reward is that very transcendence.
Eric, these trips that you're taking, are they training trips? I mean, are you teaching other people techniques?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. That's What do you think? I'm traveling so I can get a suntan? Yes, we've trained over 60,000 practitioners, or 60,000 people anyway, so far around the world how to do reconnective healing. A good 20%, meaning a good approximately 12,000 of them, are mainstream healthcare practitioners, doctors, nurses, medical researchers, and others. So reconnective healing right now is not only being utilized in private medical practices, it's also in hospitals. It's so funny because when this first started, I was a chiropractor, and I think at the time, sometimes as a chiropractor, you'd probably have trouble getting into the front door of a hospital if you're hit by a car. And
I know.
I'm invited. Now I'm invited to speak at hospitals and universities all around the globe. Even representatives from the National Institute of Health came to see the presentation and begin to understand the work.
How did these practitioners, let's say these 12,000, how did they begin to change from just being mainstream medical professionals to people who are so into now this alternative healing, as you call reconnective healing?
Yeah.
What got them to switch?
I think it was a combination, of course, of quite a number of things, one of which may very well be that this shift in time right now, this expansion in time, is allowing us to become more clearly aware of multiple dimensions of existence. So many people are talking about, and I don't want to get too 2012-y because that's not what this interview is really about.
Right.
I know, but
we'll bring you back in 2012 for that one.
Really, but it comes up so many times. People are wondering, will it be the end of the world? And I said, no, of course not. It might be the end of the world as we know it today, and I don't think we're going to wake up on December 22nd, 2012, and look under the covers and suddenly be invisible. Where did I go? But I do think that 5 or 10 or 12 years later, we're going to look back and we're going to see this rapid expansion in consciousness that has gone on. And already, if we look back to the 40s and the 50s, could you imagine medical doctors learning this work? So today, what is going on is several things. First of all, a lot of the researchers feel that reconnective healing is a level of healing that hasn't been here before on the planet, and what made them even begin to consider that was the fact that the healings are simply so much more dramatic and evident and lifelong than we've been getting through energy healing, Reiki, Jiragen, Shin, Qigong, Mahjong, Beijing, and, all the techniques, quantum this and alpha, beta, delta that. And all those things are subsets of energy, and they help us. We feel warm, we feel better, we feel a little more relaxed or balanced. But let's talk about for a minute then the healing that opens up the film, The Living Matrix.
Okay.
What happened with that was these people, Greg Becker and Harry Massey, one from San Francisco, one from London, decided to put together a film about the science behind healing. And so they started with Lynn McTaggart and Bruce Lipton and others doing research, and they contacted me a couple of times, and then our schedules didn't match up, and then I was giving a conference in Germany, and a representative of theirs came out and said, let's really make this happen. So I agreed. I finished my tour in Europe and took a quick break to go to San Francisco for the interview. And during the interview, it was basically, science and theory and what I thought it would be like. And then they asked me the question that most every interviewer asks, and I understand why it's asked, which was, what was your most dramatic healing? Now, the thing about that is the answer is always the same. It's the most recent one. And that's what I said. It's always the most recent one. That's the one that's in your heart. There's your dramatic one, because when the next one happens, then that's it. So they followed that through and said, well, what was it? And I said, well, I just got back here from Greece, and while I was in Thessaloniki, which is the second largest city there next to Athens, I gave a presentation at a small version,